But I want to talk to Scott Walter in just a second, who's a hostage negotiator and senior advisor to the UN across the Middle East. Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, is meeting Benny Gantz, the opposition leader in Israel, but he is part of Netanyahu's war cabinet as well. This is what she had to say yesterday, speaking in Alabama about the Israel-Gaza war.
The threat of Hamas poses to the people of Israel must be eliminated. And given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire. For at least the next 6 weeks, which is what is currently on the table. This will get the hostages out and get a significant amount of aid in. This would allow us to build something more enduring, to ensure Israel is secure, and to respect the right of the Palestinian people to dignity, freedom, and self-determination. Hamas claims it wants a ceasefire. Well, there is a deal on the table. And as we have said, Hamas needs to agree to that deal. Let's get a ceasefire. Let's reunite the hostages with their families. And let's provide immediate relief to the people of Gaza.
Scott Walker, good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining me.
Good afternoon.
Interesting to hear the very sort of vocal applause and cheering at the words immediate ceasefire. But she did add afterwards, didn't she, a momentary pause for at least the next 6 weeks. But those words, obviously by the crowd in Alabama, they're deemed to be very significant.
Yeah, absolutely. The Vice President of the United States is going to go on record urging for an immediate ceasefire. That's obviously going to have reverberations in the region particularly. But I think as long as there's conversations and the lines of dialogue and communication open between the Israelis and Hamas via the Qataris, then we need to remain hopeful that some kind of agreement can be reached.
What's your interpretation of where the block is at the moment?
Well, my understanding is that the Israelis are waiting for the names of the Palestinian prisoners that Hamas want to be released. And equally, they want to know, well, which of the hostages are going to be released and what kind of condition are they in, which is standard practice in any form of negotiation. It's essentially a proof of life. You want to know that the people you're negotiating the release for are alive and well.
Yeah, I mean, and the difficulty with that is that, I mean, I've been reading all kinds of claim and counterclaim over the weekend about the numbers of hostages still alive, the knowledge or lack of it as to where they are or might be. I mean, the bombardment is almost inevitably going to have killed some of those hostages, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in terms of hostage negotiations, it doesn't get much more challenging than this one because you had hundreds of hostages all being negotiated for and being held in an active war zone. And also both sides are really looking to control the narrative here with what we see in the media about where the blockages may be. But I think as long as those lines of communication remain open, we have been here before. We have managed to secure a temporary pause in the fighting back before Christmas, although that was for a shorter period. But hopefully, if we can get something that both sides can agree to for 4, 5, 6 weeks, and that can encourage the hostages to be released and aid to get into Gaza, that's surely a step in the right direction.
And what's your interpretation of Benny Gantz's trip here to meet with Kamala Harris? I mean, you've got to wonder what Netanyahu thinks about that, haven't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's obviously between the politicians to discuss and to work out. But from a negotiation perspective, it's easy to get distracted by the noise and the wider geopolitics here. But essentially, it's about the safe and the timely release of the hostages. And even if we got an agreement, it's not the same as the release and the recovery of the hostages back to safety. Often people think we get an agreement and that's it, but actually there's still a long way to go until the hostages are recovered safely.
And you're right, it is such a delicate and I mean, you know better than me, I'm telling you to suck eggs here, but it's such a delicate and sensitive business, isn't it? Negotiation, full stop, but hostage negotiation, my goodness, the lives of people in your hands.
Absolutely, which is why it's important to take nothing for granted. Things can still go wrong even at the 11th hour, which is why it's always important to urge restraint and caution, yet still remaining hopeful and optimistic that, yes, we can get a deal. Yes, we can get the hostages back safely.
Thank you very much indeed, Scott Walker, hostage negotiator and senior advisor to the UN